2025 is already such a good year for books, and it's not even February yet. It is the end of January, which means it is time to update my book tracking blanket. If you watched my last video, then you know I am continuing my book blanket from last year into this year. So before I could do my January update, I needed to finish adding on the rest of the books that I read in 2024. I went through a little bit of a reading slump. I think in the entirety of April to December, I only read 4 books. So I had to add on those 4 books on this blanket because they deserve their spot here. These are the 4 books that I read for the rest of the year, and I have already crocheted the rows onto this blanket, so I will put some footage in there while I talk about each of these books. I'm just going to give you my star rating, but I don't exactly remember my thoughts. They're not super fresh in my mind for each of these books, but I'll try my best to remember and at least give you a little bit of my thoughts on each one. So the first book that I read in April, which is this white line right here, was The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I heard a lot of people talk about this book, but I honestly didn't even know anything about it before going into it, which I think is the perfect way to read this book. If you are a romance lover and you are trying to kind of dip your toe into the fantasy world, but you're not quite sure if that's something you would enjoy, I think Ashley Poston's books are a great way to kind of find the middle ground between those. She has a lot of magical realism in her books, which can help get your mind like out of the mindset of our contemporary world and into the magical world. However, they all still take place in a contemporary timeline and setting. So Clementine is a book publicist who is kind of going through a little bit of a rough patch in life. Her aunt, who she was super close with, died a few months earlier, and when she died, she left her apartment. Clementine moves into this apartment at the beginning of the book, but it is not your typical apartment. One day she walks in to find a man standing in the kitchen, and everything in the apartment is just slightly different. She comes to find out that this man exists in the past, 7 years in the past to be exact, and she is living 7 years in his future. So the apartment kind of has this magical time traveling aspect to it, where sometimes unexpectedly it will slip 7 years in the past or 7 years in the future. Clementine starts to fall in love for this man 7 years in the past, and realizes that she may be 7 years too late to her happy ending in a relationship. I really loved this book. I love a lot of the life lessons in this book. The little parts that have her aunt in them were so fun to read. I liked all of the food aspects of this book, the lemon pie. Ewan was such a good male lead. I rated this book 5 stars, and I do think that this was one of my favorite books of 2024. If you're looking for a contemporary romance, but you're trying to find something a little bit different and want to dip your toe into the magical realism world, check out 7-Year Slip. You will not regret it. After the 7-Year Slip, I think a few months later, probably in like June or July, I read Dishonestly Yours by Krista and Becca Ritchie, and this is this pink line right here. This book is considered a new adult book, and if you are unfamiliar with Krista and Becca Ritchie, they are the authors that wrote the Addicted Calloway series, which I have right here. It's one of my favorite series of all time, so I was super excited to start this new series from them. This one is about a girl named Phoebe who comes from a family of con artists, and her friend Haley are kind of done with that life and want to move on and start fresh. So they both disappear and move to a small town in Connecticut where they are trying to start fresh, start new, and leave the life of conning behind. Everything is going great until Haley's older brother Rocky shows up, insisting that he is going to come along with them because he does not think that they will be able to live on their own. However, lying is second nature to Phoebe especially, and Haley and Rocky. So when he shows up, Phoebe makes the mistake of telling someone in the town that he is her ex-husband. So now they must play those parts around this town, and they are kind of slipping back into their old life of lying and conning the people around them. This was a really fun read. I enjoyed it a lot. I really like Krista and Becca Ritchie's writing style. I think they're really good at creating flawed characters that you kind of are rooting for and want to change for the better. Phoebe was a fun character to kind of be in her head and see how much she wanted to change, but how much she was drawn back to her past life. Rocky was the perfect companion to Phoebe, and yeah, I think I just really enjoyed their relationship and reading all about that. This is a series, so the second book comes out, I believe, in April. And then there's going to be a third as well. So I can't wait to see what happens next in this series. But this was a good read. I think I rated this 4 stars, but it was a very good read. So definitely pick it up if you are interested in that. Or if you liked the Addicted Calloway series, because this gave those vibes and it was really enjoyable to read. Next was one of my most anticipated books of the year, and honestly one that took me way longer to get through than I thought it would, and that is Funny Story by Emily Henry. That is this white row on this blanket. I look forward to Emily Henry's new books so much every April when they come out, and this one was no exception. I really looked forward to this book coming out and I was super excited. I loved the premise, but around the time that I started reading this book was around the time that I just fell into a massive reading slump. So I think I read like 1 or 2 chapters and then I put this book on hold for like 4 months, which had nothing to do with the writing or the book or anything. I think I was not in the right headspace to even read 1 chapter of any book, regardless of what it was. But when I finally read it, I fell in love with it the way that I knew I would. So this book follows Daphne, who works at a local library in a small town in Michigan. She is the perfect type A person who has everything organized and planned out to the T and likes everything to be perfect. Part of that was her perfect relationship with Peter, who she was engaged to and thought was the love of her life. The book starts with Daphne finding out that Peter cheated on her with his childhood best friend Petra. Only Daphne had moved her entire life away from her friends and her family to move back to Michigan with Peter. So suddenly she was left with no one and in a town that she knew nobody, had nowhere to live. So she ends up moving in with Petra's ex-boyfriend, Miles. They're both going through the same heartbreak situation and they are both feeling all the emotions of that. But Miles is the complete opposite of Daphne. He is very easygoing, he's laid back, he works at a winery, and he perfectly fits in this small town of Michigan. Daphne is planning a readathon at her library and is counting down the days until the readathon is over so that she can leave Waynings Bay, Michigan. She wants to get out, wants to get away from Peter and Petra and leave it all behind. But Miles is trying to convince Daphne to stay by showing her all of the good sides of Waynings Bay and trying to make her fall in love with the small town. He takes her to beaches, wineries, shows her farmers markets, and shows her around the town, and they do fun little things every weekend, and their friendship suddenly starts to maybe become a little bit more. And Daphne starts to realize that Waynings Bay might not be as bad as she first thought it was and might not be a place that she needs to run from. I adore Emily Henry's books, and this one was no exception. I actually think this might have skyrocketed to the top or my second favorite of all of her books. I enjoyed this so much more than I thought I would. It had a nice lightheartedness factor to it, which I think was all due to Miles, who was a lovely main character. I thought the premise was super interesting, and even just the opening with Daphne sitting on the couch in this new apartment working through her heartbreak and Miles is in his room listening to All by Myself on repeat over and over again was hilarious. And I also really enjoyed Daphne. I think she was a wonderful main character and I saw a lot of myself in Daphne, which is sometimes alarming when you're reading a book and it just feels like it hits home so hard, but it's also sometimes the best feeling. And I think for this one it was the best feeling. And I don't know, Emily Henry just has a way with her words that make everything feel so cozy and like everything's gonna be okay even when everything is crumbling around you. And this was definitely my top read of the year. I gave this one 5 stars. I would give it 1,000,000 if I could. If you have not read this book, I think you should definitely check it out. I think if you have not read any Emily Henry books, this is a good introduction. But this was such a good book. Very much enjoyed it. So definitely check it out if you're looking for something that is contemporary but a little bit lighthearted and has 2 really likable characters that you're rooting for the whole time. All right, last book of 2024. This is when I was trying to convince myself to kind of get out of my reading slump. I always really love reading in the winter. I think it's like the perfect cozy time to read under blankets and wearing fuzzy socks and sweatshirts with a cup of coffee. I think that is like the perfect setting, the Christmas lights, everything to read. But every time I picked up a new book, I couldn't read more than a page without putting it down. So I went back to a book that I knew I loved and knew would get me out of this like weird slump place. And that is Lovelight Farms by BK Borison, which was also the first holiday book on this blanket. So I got a new color in there, which was this maroon red color. Lovelight Farms is the first book in the Lovelight series, which is 4 books in total. Each one takes place in the same small town, but they follow a different character within the town. You meet all of the characters that are the main characters in this book of the other 3. But this one follows Stella and Luca. Stella owns a Christmas tree farm in this town, and Luca is her friend that she met a couple years earlier, right after her mom died. Luca lives in New York, but drives down to Maryland to visit Stella and his mom very often. But Stella is going through some financial troubles with the farm, and in a last-ditch effort to kind of save her dream, she enters a contest that is being held by an Instagram influencer with a big cash prize. She wanted to make the farm appear more like a romantic destination for people, so she lied on her application and said that she runs the farm with her boyfriend. Only she does not have a boyfriend. In her desperation, she asks Luca to pretend to be her boyfriend while the influencer is visiting the farm. And of course, like the good friend he is, Luca jumps at the opportunity. There's fake dating, there's the little Christmas aspect, and the small town that kind of resembles like Stars Hollow from Gilmore Girls. This book is honestly like a Hallmark movie in a book, and it is one of my favorite books and favorite reads to come back to all of the time. I love this entire series and each of the characters and the town and just everything about it. When I originally read this, I think I gave it 5 stars, so that's still my rating. And I just love this book. If you're looking for that like small town charm and an interconnected standalone series, then this is a good book to check out. But that is the rest of the books that I read in 2024, which were these 4 rows right here, and I have updated them on my blanket. Stay tuned to see the books that I read in January. Got some fun ones, got some rereads. Not really any new colors, but a lot of good books to talk about. All right, let's talk about all the books I read in January. There's one that's not here that I read as an ebook, and that is Beg, Borrow, or Steal by Sarah Adams. But let's start at the beginning of the month. If you follow me, this will come as no surprise to you, but I have been a ride or die for this series since it came out 2 years ago in May, and I look forward to every release so much. So leading up to the release of Onyx Storm, that was January 21st, I reread all of the Fourth Wing books because I really wanted to re-enter this world and I wanted to refresh my mind before the new one came out. So I won't go too in depth about this. By now, everybody knows this book, and if you don't, you should definitely check it out. But basically, this is a fantasy book, which means that I will be using this light pink yarn on my blanket. Here's my little key as a little reminder. So I will be using this color right here. Fourth Wing takes place at a war college called Basgiath, and the main character, Violet Sorengale, has entered one of the quadrants at this college. She trained her whole life to be a scribe, who is more of the informant and takes down all the information and makes the history books. But her mother forced her to kind of join the rider quadrant, which are the people that bond to dragons and go into battle. A part of their history is that one of the provinces on this continent rebelled, and now Violet is kind of stuck in the same quadrant as the son of the leader of this rebellion. You get to watch Violet struggle through the rider quadrant and kind of show her strength to the people that think she's weak, and dragons, enemies to lovers, a main man with shadow powers, kind of just everything you would want in a fantasy book wrapped up into this. There's also chronic illness rep in here, so Violet Sorengale, the main character, and Rebecca Yarros, who's the author, have EDS, which is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. If you have not checked out Fourth Wing yet, definitely do. I definitely gave this 5 stars when I first read it. It is still a 5-star book in my mind. This is one of my favorite series of all time, and I just love Xaden and dragons. What more is there you could want in a fantasy series? So after I read a fantasy book, I usually have to read a more traditional romance book afterwards, just to kind of cleanse my mind. So after Fourth Wing and before jumping into Iron Flame, I decided to read Beg, Borrow, or Steal by Sarah Adams. This book came out at the beginning of the month, and it is the third book in the Rome, Kentucky series. I love this series so much. Each of the books is kind of inspired by an Audrey Hepburn movie. The first one, When in Rome, was inspired by Roman Holiday. The second one, Practice Makes Perfect, was inspired by Funny Face. And the third one, Beg, Borrow, or Steal, was inspired by How to Steal a Million. All of these books take place in a small town in Kentucky called Rome. It very much gives Stars Hollow vibes, like everybody knows everybody, really small, tight-knit group of people in a little town. Each of the books follows the same family. So the first one was Noah, and then the other two books follow his sisters, Annie and Emily. These are just really cute, really easy, lighthearted romance reads. This one's a contemporary, so I will be using this color of yarn for that on my blanket. The first book, When in Rome, follows Noah and Amelia. Amelia is a pop star and Noah is the owner of a pie shop. The second book follows Noah's sister Annie, who is the youngest in the family, and Amelia's bodyguard, Will. Will helps teach Annie how to date. That one's super fun. I really enjoyed that one a lot. And then this one follows Emily, Noah's other sister, who is the oldest sister in the family, and Jack. And her and Jack have been rivals since college. They both teach at the same elementary school, and Jack was supposed to move to another state to get married to a girl that he was dating, but he is unexpectedly back and moves in next door to Emily, and she is dealing with having to be that close to somebody that she claims to hate. This one was super cute. I really enjoyed it. They both have a lot of secrets that they're keeping from the whole town and each other at the beginning, so it's interesting to kind of read it along and find out those secrets and then find out how they tell each other. I love the whole family dynamic in this book. I love the Walkers. I think they embody like the perfect little tight-knit siblings, and yeah, it's a good read. So if you're looking for something lighthearted, something that just is so soft and just makes you feel so like joyful and happy inside, definitely check out the Rome, Kentucky series. This third book was really good. I really enjoyed it. I gave this 4 stars. It's not my favorite out of the series, but I still really enjoyed it and I still really look forward to the next one. After that contemporary, it was back to my Fourth Wing reread. So I then read Iron Flame, obviously. This one is obviously a fantasy, so I'll be using that pink yarn again. I won't go too much in depth about this. I already talked about what Fourth Wing is about. This is just kind of a continuation of Fourth Wing. I don't want to spoil anything if you haven't read them already, but I really loved Iron Flame. I think you get a lot more progression in the relationship between Violet and Xaden, which is lovely and beautiful and amazing. You get to kind of travel outside of Basgiath, which is fun, super fun. I like when the world's expanded. You get to see a little bit more world building in this one. Definitely a lot of character development. The dragons are always so fun, and especially in this one, Taryn and Indarna's little relationship was hilarious to watch unfold. This one also kind of left off on a cliffhanger. Not as bad of a cliffhanger as Fourth Wing, I would say, but definitely left you like ready to read the third book. I really did enjoy this one. Not my favorite out of the series, but it definitely has its own scenes that are amazing. I just really love these characters and love the world that Rebecca Yarros has built. So that was this one. This is also 5 stars for me. I will probably rate every book in this series 5 stars because the whole series is just 5 stars to me. And I don't know. I like the little escapism and the new world that it is in, and yeah, the dragons. So once again, if you have not read the Fourth Wing series, definitely you should check them out. They are amazing books and I will never stop talking about them. So yeah, that was book number 3. Book number 4 of the month was, of course, one of my most anticipated books of this entire year, Onyx Storm. Oh god, I just finished this book last night and oh my god, I am like still reeling from the ending. I still think I need to go back and reread like the last 5 chapters again. This book was insane. No spoilers. I will not be doing any spoilers in this review at all. And I'm not even going to go that in depth into what happens in this book because obviously it's just a continuation of this whole series and I don't want to spoil it for anybody or spoil anything at all. But oh my gosh. I think this just became my favorite out of the whole series of Fourth Wing. This book was insane. I do think it definitely took a little bit to get into it. The first like 20 chapters or so were a little bit slower than I thought they would be. They weren't bad by any means, but there just wasn't a lot of like action happening. But from chapter like 30 on, like I was glued to the page. I could not put this book down. It was all I was thinking about. I literally like could not stop reading. And oh my God, the ending. Oh, I can't. I don't know how I'm gonna wait for the next book. I know like Rebecca Yarros should take all the time in the world that she needs because this was amazing and a masterpiece of a book. But I'm already counting down the days until we get book number 4. Oh my God, the ending was insane. That's probably all I'm gonna keep saying over and over again. It's just the ending, the ending, the ending. But like, wow, if you read this book, you know. I loved Xaden in this book. I think this was my favorite that Xaden's been in any of the books. He was just, yes, he was his like broody, moody, angsty self, but like there was just his love for Violet was just so pure and like so, like, God, they just don't make men like that in real life. Not unexpectedly, but like I really loved Garrick in this book. And Bodhi. Garrick and Bodhi both were characters that they didn't have that many like scenes, but the scenes that they did have were very good, and I love those two characters. Riddick, on the other hand, I've loved Riddick since the beginning, but oh my God, he was like the funniest person in this book. He gave like the much needed comic relief in all of the scenes that needed it, and he was just amazing. Obviously, there's a lot of scenes that were heart-wrenching and made you kind of tear up a little bit, maybe cry a little bit, but that's expected from Rebecca Yarros. Broccoli, if you know, you know. Freaking loved Broccoli. This book was a masterpiece. I love it so much. I'm already contemplating rereading all of these again because I just think there are so many things that she put in the first 2 books that you've kind of finally find out the answers in this one. And now I feel like I need to go back and give her the credit where it is due because she has been putting those Easter eggs in since the very first page of the first book. And it's insane to kind of see them all start to come together. I'm so excited for book number 4. Not sure how I'm gonna last that long waiting till we get that book, but I feel like I'm probably gonna reread these books about 4 more times this year because oh my God. The ending, the ending, the ending. That's all I'm gonna say. I can't. This is obviously a 5-star read for me. This may or may not have just become my favorite fantasy book of all time, and if you have not read this series, this is your sign. Go read it. It's amazing. It's becoming a show on Amazon soon, which that's a whole scary thing in its own right. I don't know if they're going to be able to do it justice. You should definitely read the series before that comes out. Read it, read it, read it. All right, the last book that I read this month, this is kind of a little bit of a cheater because I haven't actually finished it yet, but there's a few more days left in January while I'm filming this, and I definitely will be finishing it. I'm like 75% of the way through, so it counts enough, and I have enough thoughts to give you about this book. This was also one of my most anticipated reads of this year, and this is First Time Caller by BK Borison. I don't know what I did right in the universe to be able to get an arc of this book, but oh my God, I am so thankful that I did. The minute that she announced this book, I was so excited for it. Everything about this just sounded like the perfect book for me. Hold on, before I get too much into this, I forgot. This is a contemporary. So once again, I will be using this cream colored yarn for my blanket. Okay, back to this book. This sounded right up my alley, and then every little kind of teaser or thing that she was sharing for it was like the most perfect, most amazing thing that I have ever read, and it just made me so much more excited to read this. So I finally dived in this month. It comes out next month. It comes out February 11th, I believe, week of Valentine's Day, which is very fitting. Definitely make sure you check this out next month. It is the most perfect book. Anyways, this is a new series that she started. I read a book by her earlier in this video that was at the end of 2024 actually, which was Lovelight Farms. Those are all by BK Borison. This is a new series from her that is inspired by Nora Ephron movies. This one is inspired by Sleepless in Seattle, and then there's gonna be 2 more in the series that are inspired by You've Got Mail and When Harry Met Sally. I love Nora Ephron's movies with like everything in my soul. I rewatch at least one of them probably like once a month, if not more. They always have like the most perfect answers to anything that you're going through in life. They're just the most warmest love stories that just are so realistic, but so good and so grounded and so perfectly plotted in a way that just make them so rewatchable, even if you've seen them 5 million times. This book is like right up there, right up that alley. I think I could probably reread this 500 more times and it still would not be enough. I'm so excited for the rest of this series. But this book on its own. So this one is inspired by Sleepless in Seattle, except it's kind of like switched. Lucy is our main character, and she is a single mom to an 11-year-old daughter. Her daughter ends up calling into the radio station that Aiden is a host at, called Heartstrings. It's Baltimore's romance hotline. So Lucy's daughter calls into this radio station saying that her mom is lonely and she wants her to start dating again and find her someone to love, basically. This clip from this radio station ends up going viral, and Lucy is asked to kind of join Aiden on the radio show, and they're gonna try and find her perfect match, her magical love story. Aiden is the host of this romance hotline in Baltimore, except that he has kind of given up on love. So while he's trying to help Lucy find her great love, she's trying to help him kind of find the magic and love again too. This is such a beautiful book. Just everything about these characters is so like thought out and perfect. I swear on every page there's a new quote that I like highlight or write down or screenshot and take a picture of to remember it. This is just such a magical book, and it takes place in Baltimore, which is where BK Borison is from. It's also where I am from and kind of have a lot of family there, and I don't live there anymore, so this is kind of a very nostalgic feeling book. I love all of the little like Maryland things that are put into her books. It's being someone from Maryland, it's like super cute to kind of see those, and you don't really catch them unless it's like an if you know kind of situation. The radio station in this book I love so much. I love all the characters there. I'm pretty sure that the second book is about Jackson, who is in this book. So I can't wait to read that. I really loved his character in this. He was super funny and like the perfect little sidekick to Aiden. Aiden Valentine? That's a new book boyfriend right there. He is amazing. The way she wrote him, like he's this like broody, moody man kind of, but he has this like soft spot for Lucy the minute he meets her, and he's just like the perfect person. Oh, I can't get over it. And Lucy too. Lucy's like this strong, independent woman who is also a hopeless romantic, and she just kind of wants to find that like magical love story in life. Who doesn't? I mean, this is just such a relatable book, such a perfect book, and it's especially perfect that it's coming out around Valentine's Day. So this is one that I would definitely say everybody should pick up. If you love rom-coms and you love Nora Ephron's movies, definitely get this book. I will never shut up about this book. This is like a 5-star read, honestly, like a 15-star read. All the stars in the world. This book deserves them all because it is amazing and perfect and beautiful. And I can't wait to read the rest of the books that are going to be in this series. Thank you, BK Borison, for this arc, however I got it. And thank you for writing this book because it has touched my soul in ways that I did not expect, and has definitely become one of my favorite books of all time. This was such a good month for reading. I really just don't even know. It was like the perfect introduction back into reading after I took 8 months off pretty much. Just reminded me of all the beautiful love stories that are out there and all the beautiful books, and we're hardly into the year and I already have like 2 favorite books ever that I've read. Like I don't know how the rest of the year is going to top this. However, BK Borison has another series coming out later this year that has some like magical realism to it, and it is it's called Good Spirits, and I think it's kind of like a Christmas Carol retelling. Like there's The Ghost of Christmas Past, Present, and Future, and there's going to be 3 books in that one too. Super excited for that series. Genuinely cannot wait. She has become an auto-buy author for me. Anything she writes, I'm gonna buy it, and I'm probably gonna love it because these are all just such amazing books. Thanks for sticking around and listening to me ramble, and I'm gonna go actually crochet my blanket, and then I will come back and show you what it looks like when I've done all of those rows, so stay tuned for that. I finished crocheting all of these rows onto my blanket. We've got a lot of white and pink, so the pink is fantasy and the white is contemporary romance. So this little section was for Fourth Wing, this was for Beg, Borrow, or Steal, this was combined for Iron Flame and Onyx Storm, and then this was for First Time Caller. I've slightly changed the way that I'm doing my rows on this. Before I was kind of doing the rows sort of based on the pages in the book, but also just kind of for what felt right depending on how long the book was. But I wanted to do something more consistent now, so I'm pretty much doing 1 row of single crochets for each 100 pages. So if there's a double crochet row, like up here I did 2 double crochet rows for First Time Caller because that book had 400 pages, so I'm counting double crochet rows as 2 rows. So if it's a single crochet row, it counts for 100 pages, and if it's a double crochet row, it counts for 200 pages. That's probably a little bit confusing, but that's kind of just the way that I've determined that I'm going to do the rest of this blanket. I'm really liking how this blanket is turning out. I'm liking this little pink section that I have going on. Hopefully I will get some different colors in there soon though. Yeah, thanks for watching and listening to me yap about all of these books. As always, leave your book recommendations in the caption down below, and make sure you're subscribed to see my video next month and all of the books that I read in February, and the update on my blanket at the end of February. All of my socials are linked in the description down below as well. You can kind of see more frequent updates on this blanket on my Instagram and TikTok. I will see you at the end of February for my next update.